The human soldier stood on the surface of a distant planet, surrounded by the vast and unfamiliar landscape of shimmering alien skies. His mission was clear: participate in an intergalactic peacekeeping initiative and forge connections with the people of this new world. But as he gazed out at the alien horizon, he couldn't shake the feeling of being an outsider, lost among the unfamiliar customs and practices of the strange species he had come to meet. His name was Captain Alex Carter, a seasoned soldier who had traveled across the stars, seen alien worlds, and faced many dangers. But none of that could prepare him for what he was about to encounter. The alien species he had been sent to meet were known for their fearsome reputation. Tall, strong, and proud, the alien warriors had earned a place of honor in the galaxy due to their combat prowess and unyielding spirit. But despite their reputation, they were also known for their complex rituals and traditions, some of which were a mystery even to the best diplomats in the galaxy. Alex's heart raced as he entered the grand hall of the Alien Council, surrounded by towering statues of their ancestors. The room was filled with an intimidating silence, broken only by the sound of his footsteps. He stood at attention, waiting for the meeting to begin. A figure emerged from the shadows. She was everything Alex had heard about, and more. The alien warrioress stood tall, her posture rigid and commanding, her eyes sharp and calculating. Her skin had a pale bluish tint, almost glowing in the light of the room. She wore battle armor that looked as if it had been forged in the heart of a star, and her presence alone made the air feel charged with energy. She was the leader of the warriors, the one who commanded respect from her people and from those who dared to enter their domain. Her name was Commander Lyra, and she was known throughout the galaxy for her strength and her fierce loyalty to her people. Alex had heard stories about her, stories of her victories in battle, her leadership, and her unyielding will. But standing before her, he couldn't help but feel a twinge of awe and nervousness. The stories didn't do justice to her presence. As the meeting began, the tension in the air was palpable. The humans and the alien warriors exchanged formal pleasantries, their voices echoing off the stone walls. Alex tried to remain calm, focusing on the mission, but it was hard not to be distracted by Commander Lyra's piercing gaze. Every movement she made was fluid and precise, like a dancer in perfect harmony with the world around her. Then came the moment that would change everything. Alex had been briefed on the customs of the alien species, but he hadn't been prepared for this. As the conversation turned to matters of diplomacy, Commander Lyra extended her hand toward him. The gesture seemed innocent enough, just a simple form of greeting, or so Alex thought. "Greetings, Captain Carter," she said, her voice steady and confident, yet with a hint of curiosity. "It is an honor to meet you." Alex, following the protocol he had learned, instinctively reached out to shake her hand. But the moment his hand touched hers, he realized he had made a mistake. Her hand wasn't extended for a handshake. It was for something much more significant. Without thinking, Alex leaned forward and gently kissed her hand, his lips brushing against the cool, smooth surface of her skin. He had been taught that this was a traditional greeting among many alien cultures, a sign of respect. And so, he had performed it without hesitation, thinking it was just a matter of etiquette. But as soon as he did, the entire room seemed to fall silent. Alex pulled back, his heart pounding in his chest. He looked up, expecting to see a smile, a nod of approval, or at least a friendly acknowledgement. Instead, he saw Commander Lyra standing completely still, her expression unreadable. The other warriors around the room remained silent, their eyes shifting from Alex to their commander. Alex's stomach twisted with nervousness. Had he done something wrong? He had read the reports, but none of the diplomats had mentioned anything about specific hand gestures or their meanings. Was this some sort of cultural misunderstanding? He stood there awkwardly, unsure of what to say next. His mind raced, but no words came. The silence stretched on, and the tension in the room seemed to grow thicker with each passing second. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Commander Lyra spoke. Her voice was calm, but there was an unmistakable edge to it. "You have performed a great honor, Captain Carter," she said slowly, her words measured. "But it is not a gesture to be taken lightly." Alex felt his heart skip a beat. He tried to muster a response, but nothing came out. He had no idea what he had just done. The other warriors glanced at each other, and some exchanged quiet words in their native tongue. Alex couldn't understand them, but he could tell from their body language that they were discussing something important. Commander Lyra's gaze remained fixed on him, her eyes unreadable. "You may not know it," she continued, "but what you have done is not a simple form of etiquette. It is a gesture reserved for a very different purpose. It is a gesture of bonding." Alex's mind whirled. A gesture of bonding. He had only kissed her hand out of respect. How could something so simple be so significant? Alex stood there, his mouth dry and his mind spinning. He hadn't expected the kiss to be anything more than a simple greeting, but Commander Lyra's words now echoed in his mind. A gesture of bonding. He could feel his face flush with embarrassment, though he tried his best to hide it. The silence in the room was heavy. The other warriors, who had once seemed so confident and composed, now appeared uncertain, their eyes shifting uncomfortably. Alex wondered if he had just committed some kind of great cultural faux pas. What had he gotten himself into? Lyra's gaze remained fixed on him, and Alex felt a twinge of fear. He had never been the kind of person to back down in the face of danger. He had faced down alien creatures, dangerous space pirates, and ruthless enemies. But this was different. He was dealing with a misunderstanding, a cultural mistake, and he had no idea how to fix it. For a few moments, no one spoke. The atmosphere felt thick with tension. Alex shifted his weight nervously, unsure of what to say. He had read all the manuals, learned about alien customs, and gone through countless briefings, but none of that had prepared him for this. He could feel the eyes of the alien warriors on him, watching, waiting for him to say something. He wanted to explain, to apologize, but the words didn't come. What could he possibly say to fix this? He had no idea what had just happened, let alone how to make it right. Finally, Lyra broke the silence. Her voice, though calm, carried a weight that made Alex's heart race. "You do not understand, Captain Carter," she said, her words slow and deliberate. "What you have done is not a simple gesture of greeting." Alex's mind raced as he tried to process her words. He had no idea what she meant. Was the kiss a mistake? Should he have not done it? He opened his mouth to speak, but the words stuck in his throat. Lyra stepped forward, her presence commanding and powerful. She was close now, her towering figure almost intimidating as she looked down at him. There was a flicker of something in her eyes, something Alex couldn't quite place. Was it confusion? Curiosity? He couldn't tell. "The kiss you gave me," she continued, "is a sign of something far deeper than simple respect. It is a bond, a symbol of union between two people. A gesture of this nature is never made lightly among my people." Alex felt his heart race. He hadn't realized. He had no idea. "I didn't mean to," Alex began, but Lyra raised a hand, silencing him. "You do not need to explain yourself, Captain," she said, her voice softer now, though still firm. "You acted out of respect. I can see that. But the meaning behind that gesture is much more than you understand. You have entered a space that is sacred to my people." Her words hung in the air like an unspoken promise, and Alex found himself at a loss for what to do next. He had come to this planet hoping for a peaceful interaction, but now he wasn't sure where he stood. The cultural gap between him and the aliens was wider than he had imagined. "I'm sorry," Alex finally managed, though the words felt inadequate. "I didn't know. I thought it was just a greeting. I didn't mean to offend you, Commander." Lyra studied him for a long moment. Her eyes, usually so hard and unyielding, seemed to soften just a little. "You did not offend me," she said, her tone less sharp now. But what you have done cannot be undone. It is not something I take lightly." Alex swallowed hard. What did that mean? What had he just done? He could tell that Lyra wasn't angry, but there was a seriousness in her words that told him this was more than just an innocent mistake. He felt the weight of the situation pressing down on him, and for the first time in a long while, he felt small and uncertain. "I will need time to think about this," Lyra said, her voice steady again. "You have taken a step that changes things, whether you meant to or not. I will not forget this." Before Alex could say anything more, Lyra turned away from him and walked towards the other warriors who had been silently observing. They began to whisper among themselves in their native tongue. The hushed sounds filled the room, and Alex couldn't help but feel like an outsider. He was completely out of his depth. As Lyra spoke with her warriors, Alex tried to gather his thoughts. He had never been one to shy away from challenges, but this situation was different. He hadn't come to this alien world expecting anything more than a formal exchange of pleasantries, but now it seemed like his actions had set off a chain of events he couldn't control. For the next few minutes, Alex stood in silence, contemplating what had just happened. He couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just an unfortunate mistake. There was something in the way Lyra had looked at him, something in her voice, that told him this wasn't the end. Something had been set in motion, and he wasn't sure if he was ready for what came next. He glanced over at Lyra, still speaking with her warriors. Her presence was imposing, her strength evident even in her words, and yet there was something more to her, something he hadn't expected. A depth, a mystery that he hadn't anticipated. Whatever had just happened between them, it was far from over. Alex sat quietly in the corner of the large room, still trying to make sense of the strange situation. The weight of his earlier mistake pressed down on him, and every thought seemed tangled with confusion and regret. He had no idea how such a simple gesture could have caused so much uncertainty. He only wanted to show respect to Commander Lyra, but now it seemed like he had opened a door he couldn't close. His mind kept returning to the words Lyra had spoken. A gesture of bonding. He had unknowingly become part of something much bigger than a simple greeting. In all the training he had received, no one had prepared him for this. He had no idea that something as simple as kissing a warrior's hand could be so deeply symbolic. His only goal had been to make a good impression, to avoid making any cultural errors, but now he realized that it wasn't just a mistake. It was something profound. Something that connected him to her in ways he didn't understand. The room around him felt quieter now, as if the air had thickened with unspoken words. The other alien warriors had returned to their discussions, but they often glanced at him, their eyes filled with a mix of curiosity and caution. He felt their stares, but none of them spoke to him directly. A low hum of conversation reached Alex's ears. He couldn't make out the words, but he could sense the change in tone. Commander Lyra had already left the room, disappearing behind one of the towering stone columns. She had left him with a promise. "You will need time to think about this." Alex didn't know what that meant, but he understood that whatever this was, it wasn't something to take lightly. His mind began to race as he tried to make sense of what had happened. He had learned many things in his years as a soldier, but this was something new, something different. After what felt like hours, the door to the room opened again. Alex stood up immediately, his posture rigid as he faced the newcomer. It was the diplomat who had been assigned to guide him through the cultural aspects of this alien world. His name was Lorien, a seasoned diplomat with years of experience in intergalactic relations. Lorien had been the one who had explained many of the customs to Alex before his arrival, though none of what he had shared had mentioned anything about this particular ritual. Lorien's face was calm, but Alex could tell something was off. The diplomat's eyes lingered on Alex for a moment before he spoke. "Captain Carter," Lorien began, his voice steady but carrying a weight Alex couldn't quite place. "I've been informed about what happened earlier. It seems you've had an unexpected encounter with Commander Lyra." Alex winced at the mention of Lyra's name. I didn't mean to. He started, but Lorien raised a hand to stop him. Don't worry. I understand, Lorien said, his voice filled with a calm reassurance. But there are things you need to understand. What you did today is not just a simple greeting. It is something much deeper, something sacred to the people of this planet. Alex frowned, trying to gather his thoughts. I don't understand. I thought it was just a formal greeting, a sign of respect. Lorien nodded slowly. That's what you thought. But it is far more than that. The people of this world have a rich and complex culture, one that doesn't always translate well to outsiders. You see, in their tradition, a kiss on the hand is a very intimate gesture. It is not just a way of showing respect. It signifies the beginning of a bond between two individuals. A bond. Alex repeated, feeling his confusion deepen. But I didn't know. I thought it was just polite. I know, Lorien said. That's the problem. You didn't know. And because of that, Commander Lyra's reaction was expected, though perhaps not what you would have anticipated. Alex's heart raced. So, what does this mean for me? For her? Lorien paused, then lowered his voice. It means that Commander Lyra now sees you in a way she didn't before. In her eyes, you have crossed a line. You've done something that's not just about respect. You've signaled to her that you are willing to form a connection, a bond that goes beyond what you intended. Alex felt his stomach tighten. Is that bad? Lorien hesitated, choosing his words carefully. It is not necessarily bad, but it is complicated. You see, this is not a culture where bonds are formed lightly. When two people enter this kind of connection, it is not something that can be undone. It's a commitment, a bond that cannot be easily broken. Alex felt the weight of those words sink in. He had made a mistake, yes, but he hadn't realized just how deeply his actions had impacted Lyra. He hadn't understood what he had truly done. Will she want to talk to me? Alex asked, his voice uncertain. Lorien's gaze softened. That is something only she can decide. But I would suggest you give her some time. She will need to process this, just as you need to understand it. But remember, Captain, this isn't something that can be forgotten. It's a change in how she views you. Alex nodded slowly, absorbing Lorien's words. He had never been in a situation like this before. There were many things about war and diplomacy that he understood, but this was different. This was personal, and it was far beyond anything he could have prepared for. As Lorien turned to leave, he paused at the door and looked back at Alex. Be patient, he said softly, and do not make the mistake of thinking that this is simply a misunderstanding. It is far more than that. Alex watched as Lorien exited the room, his mind still reeling from everything he had just learned. He didn't know what would happen next, but one thing was clear. His relationship with Commander Lyra had changed. And now he had to figure out how to navigate this new, complicated bond he had unknowingly created. The days that followed were filled with an uneasy silence. Alex found himself lost in thought more than once, his mind constantly returning to the moment when he had kissed Commander Lyra's hand. He could still feel the coolness of her skin against his lips, the weight of her piercing gaze when she had told him that what he had done was not simply a gesture of respect, but something much deeper. But despite the time that had passed since the incident, Commander Lyra had not sought him out. She had not spoken to him since that fateful moment, and Alex was beginning to wonder if he had made an irreparable mistake. The atmosphere around the alien settlement had become more tense. While the other warriors still spoke to him with the same polite distance, there was an unspoken wariness in their eyes. Alex couldn't help but feel the eyes of the entire community on him, as if they were all waiting for the next move, for him to make the next wrong step. Alex had tried to make amends in his own way. He had gone over the cultural texts and spoken to Lorien again, seeking more understanding of the traditions. He practiced what he had learned about the rituals, hoping that by gaining knowledge, he could avoid further mistakes. but nothing seemed to ease the nagging feeling that lingered in his chest. He knew that his actions had changed something, but he didn't know what. It was on the fourth day that he finally saw her again. He was in the common hall of the settlement, walking through the grand chamber when a figure caught his eye. Commander Lyra stood at the far end of the hall, speaking with one of her officers. She was surrounded by a few of her closest warriors, her back straight, her presence commanding as always. But there was something different about her today, something softer in the way she moved, as if a part of her, a part Alex hadn't seen before, was just barely peeking through the surface. It had been 4 days since their encounter, and Alex had expected to avoid her. He had feared that his mistake would drive a wedge between them, but now, seeing her in the flesh, he felt something stir within him, a mixture of fear and hope. He had to speak to her. Alex took a deep breath and approached. The warriors around her parted as he neared, and for a moment he thought he might turn away. But then he saw her eyes, locked onto him with an intensity that left him frozen in place. "Commander Lyra," he said, his voice steady despite the racing of his heart, "I need to talk to you." She didn't move at first, her eyes scanning him as if measuring every inch of his being. Then, after what felt like an eternity, she nodded. "Come," she said, her voice cool, but not unkind. She led him into a smaller, quieter room just off the main hall. The others stayed behind, their watchful eyes still trained on the two of them. Alex couldn't shake the feeling that every person in the room was waiting for this moment to unfold. Inside the room, Lyra turned to face him. The door closed behind them, and suddenly they were alone. "Speak, Captain," Lyra said. "I have waited for you to approach me." Alex hesitated. He hadn't prepared for this moment, hadn't planned what he was going to say. All he knew was that he had to try to make things right. "I didn't know," he began. "I didn't understand what my actions meant. All I wanted was to show respect to you and your people. I never meant to overstep." He stopped, unsure of how to continue. Lyra was silent for a moment, her expression unreadable. She stepped closer, and Alex felt a wave of nervousness wash over him. The tension in the room was palpable, thick with the weight of their conversation. "You misunderstood," she said, her voice firm, but not angry. "But you are not the only one who must come to terms with this. I, too, must decide how I will respond to you." Alex's heart skipped a beat. "What does that mean?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "I must decide if I will accept your bond," Lyra said simply. "The gesture you made, kissing my hand, was not just a mistake. It was a choice I did not ask for. And now, I must consider the path forward." The words stung, but Alex forced himself to meet her gaze. "I never meant to make a choice for you," he said. "I only wanted to show you the respect you deserve. I didn't understand what I was doing. But if I've done something wrong, if I've caused you discomfort, I will do whatever it takes to make it right." Lyra's eyes softened just slightly. "You have not caused me discomfort, Captain. But what you have done is not something to be taken lightly." Alex felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, he wasn't beyond redemption. She continued, her voice quieter now, almost contemplative. "In my world, bonds are not formed on a whim. They are forged in the heart. You kissed my hand, and now I must decide if I am willing to allow this bond to grow, or if it is something that must be severed." Alex nodded, his throat tight with emotion. "I understand," he said, "and I will accept whatever you decide. I just want you to know that I respect you, Commander, more than I've ever respected anyone. I made a mistake, but I'm willing to learn, if you'll allow me." There was a long pause as Lyra looked at him. Her gaze was intense, and for a moment, Alex feared she would turn away, that she would choose to end this before it even began. Then, finally, she spoke. "Perhaps it is not the worst mistake you could have made, Captain," she said, her voice soft but steady. "Perhaps we can move forward. But know this, the bond you have unknowingly started will not be something easily undone. It will shape both of our futures." Alex's heart surged with both fear and relief. "I'll do whatever it takes," he said. "I'll learn. I'll do things your way." Lyra nodded, her face unreadable once again. "Then let us begin. But remember, Captain, this is not just a matter of respect. It is a matter of trust. And trust cannot be given lightly." The days after their conversation passed in a blur of tension and uncertainty. Alex could feel the weight of his actions, but there was something else now, something new. Every glance from Commander Lyra seemed to carry more meaning, and each passing moment felt like a silent negotiation between them. She had not pushed him away, but she had not fully embraced him either. She was waiting for him to prove that he was worthy of the bond he had unknowingly started. He spent his days trying to learn as much as he could about her culture. He studied the customs, the traditions, the way relationships were formed in her world. He spent hours speaking to Lorien, the diplomat who had guided him since his arrival, asking endless questions about what he could do to show that he respected their way of life. Yet, despite all the knowledge, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more, something deeper, that he would never fully understand unless he was able to truly connect with Lyra. The silence between them stretched on for a few days, but it was not the uncomfortable silence of earlier. This was a more thoughtful, deliberate silence. Every word that passed between them now seemed to carry weight, even the simplest greetings. She would nod to him when they crossed paths, and he would always bow his head in return, a silent acknowledgement of the space they now shared. One evening, as the twin suns dipped low on the horizon, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold, Alex found himself once again walking toward the council hall. He had been working late, reviewing more documents, but something pulled him to the hall, something he couldn't explain. He had not seen Lyra all day, and the feeling of longing, of wanting to understand her, had been growing inside him for days. When he stepped inside the hall, he found her standing by the large stone windows, looking out over the valley. The sight of her took his breath away, her posture so commanding yet so graceful, her expression unreadable. For a moment, Alex hesitated, unsure if it was wise to approach her, but something deep inside him told him that now was the time. "Commander," he said softly, his voice breaking the silence. Lyra turned to face him, her gaze steady. She said nothing at first, but her eyes softened as they locked onto his. There was a brief moment of stillness between them, and Alex could feel the tension in the air. It wasn't the heavy, uncomfortable tension of before. No, this felt different, like two people on the edge of something, unsure of what the next step would bring, but both willing to take it. "Captain," she replied, her voice calm but carrying an unmistakable weight. "You seek me out often now." Alex nodded. I wanted to talk to you. I don't know if I'm doing the right thing, but I have to ask, what happens now? What do you expect of me?" Lyra's expression shifted slightly, and for the first time, Alex thought he saw a flicker of something, perhaps curiosity, perhaps even a hint of vulnerability. "You are asking the wrong question," she said. "What I expect is not as important as what you are willing to offer. What are you willing to give to honor the bond you have started?" Alex took a deep breath. He had known this moment was coming, but it didn't make it any easier to face. "I'm willing to learn. I'll adapt. I'll do whatever it takes to show that I respect your ways, your culture, and you." Lyra seemed to consider his words, her gaze thoughtful. She stepped closer, her footsteps silent on the stone floor. "Respect is important, Captain, but respect alone will not form a bond. It is trust that is the foundation of everything. Do you trust me?" The question hung in the air, and for a long moment, Alex wasn't sure how to respond. Could he trust her? He had only known her for a short time, and yet in the time he had spent with her, he had come to understand that she was not only a warrior but a leader, a person who commanded respect and admiration. He had seen her strength in the way she led her people, in the way she carried herself. But trust was more than admiration. It was something deeper, something that took time to build. "I want to trust you," he said finally. "I've seen what you've done for your people, how much you care for them. And I respect that. But I don't know if I can say that I trust you completely yet. Not until I understand more. Not until I know you better." Lyra's lips curved into a slight smile. "That is honest," she said, "and I appreciate that." Alex felt a weight lift off his chest. He had feared that his answer might disappoint her, but it seemed that Lyra valued his honesty. She was not asking for blind trust. She was asking for something real, something that could grow over time. "I will give you that time, Captain," she said. "But know that time is not an endless gift. We are both bound by our choices. We will either form this bond together or not. I will not force you, but I will not allow you to walk away either." Alex nodded slowly. There was a determination in her words, but also a sense of understanding, an acknowledgement that they were both learning how to navigate this strange connection they had started. "I'm not walking away," Alex said, his voice firm now. "I don't know where this is going, but I'm willing to see it through. I just want to be sure that I'm not stepping on anything that I shouldn't. I don't want to make the same mistake again." Lyra stepped closer, her presence overwhelming but not threatening. She placed a hand on his shoulder, a small gesture of reassurance. "You will learn, Captain, and you will not make that mistake again, because now you understand." The warmth of her touch, unexpected and sincere, sent a ripple of surprise through Alex. He had never expected something so small, so simple, to carry so much weight. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between them felt comfortable, no longer heavy with awkwardness, but filled with understanding. "I'll be here when you're ready," Lyra said quietly, before stepping back. "And when you are ready, we will move forward together." As she turned to leave, Alex stood in the center of the room, feeling as if something significant had just shifted between them. There was still so much left to discover, so much left to learn, but for the first time since he arrived on this strange planet, he felt like maybe, just maybe, he was on the right path. The following days felt different. The air between Alex and Lyra had shifted, though neither of them had spoken of it directly. They had begun to move in tandem, each of their actions a silent acknowledgement of the bond they were slowly forming. Lyra continued to lead her people with the same strength and precision, while Alex went about his work, his role still primarily as a soldier and diplomat. But now, every glance, every interaction seemed to carry more weight, as if the very fabric of their relationship was growing thicker with each passing moment. Alex tried to focus on his duties, keeping his mind occupied with the work at hand. But it was difficult. It was hard to ignore the way his thoughts kept drifting back to Lyra, to the small moments they shared, the way she would look at him with those piercing eyes, as if she could see straight through him, the way her presence filled the room, commanding yet subtle. She was a leader, a warrior, but there was a side of her that Alex was beginning to glimpse, a side that was soft and contemplative, one that she didn't often show to anyone. It was on the 6th day after their conversation that Alex found himself in the training hall, watching the warriors practice. The sound of clashing weapons echoed through the stone walls, a reminder of the strength and skill of the people Lyra led. The warriors moved with fluid precision, each strike and parry a demonstration of the discipline that Lyra had instilled in them. Alex had come to admire the warriors, but it was Lyra who had truly captured his attention. As he watched them, his mind wandered to the unspoken tension between him and Lyra. They hadn't discussed the bond in detail, but it was always there, lingering just beneath the surface. Alex couldn't help but wonder what would happen next. Would they remain as they were, forever walking on this uncertain path? Or would something more develop between them, something neither of them had planned or expected? His thoughts were interrupted when Lyra herself entered the training hall, her steps steady and purposeful. She moved with the same grace and strength as her warriors, but there was an air of quiet intensity about her. She didn't speak immediately, but Alex could feel the change in the atmosphere as soon as she entered. The warriors, who had been practicing in pairs, stopped their training and stood at attention. It was a simple gesture, but it was clear that they respected her deeply. Lyra turned to Alex, her eyes meeting his with that same unreadable expression. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The air between them felt thick, filled with words that neither was ready to say. "You've been watching us," Lyra said finally, her voice calm, but with a hint of curiosity. "What do you see, Captain?" Alex hesitated for a moment before answering. "I see strength, discipline, a sense of unity that comes from knowing your place, your purpose." Lyra nodded, though her gaze never wavered. "And what about yourself, Captain? Do you know your place, your purpose?" Alex blinked, caught off guard by the question. He hadn't expected her to turn the conversation back on him. It was a question he had asked himself many times over the past few days. What was his purpose here? Was he merely a diplomat, a soldier? Or was there something more he was meant to do in this world, something that went beyond his original mission? "I'm still figuring that out," he said, his voice steady but reflective. "But I know I'm here to help, to build trust, not just between our peoples, but between us." Lyra's eyes softened slightly at his words, though she said nothing for a long moment. She looked out at the warriors, her gaze sweeping over the room. "Trust is not given lightly," she said. "It is earned, and it is fragile." Alex nodded. He knew that better than anyone. He had seen trust broken in his own world, and he had seen the consequences of that. He understood the weight of her words, the responsibility that came with forming a bond, whether between allies or between individuals. "You're right," he said quietly. "Trust takes time. And I don't expect it to happen overnight, but I'm willing to work for it, if you are." Lyra looked at him then, her gaze sharper than before, as if she were searching for something in his eyes. "And what if that trust is never given? What if we can never truly form this bond?" Alex felt a pang of uncertainty at her question. He didn't know what would happen. Didn't know if they could ever fully bridge the gap between their worlds. But he did know one thing. He couldn't let this chance slip away without trying. "I'll accept whatever happens," he said, his voice steady. "But I want to try. I want to see where this goes. I don't want to walk away from this." For a moment, Lyra said nothing. She studied him, her eyes calculating, but there was something else there, something that Alex couldn't quite put his finger on. It was as if she were considering his words carefully, weighing them against something that only she could understand. Finally, she nodded, a small but decisive gesture. "We will see," she said simply. "But know this, Captain. There is more at stake here than either of us realizes. The bond we speak of is not just between you and me. It is a bond that will affect the fate of our people." Alex nodded, understanding the weight of her words. This wasn't just about them anymore. It was about their worlds, their futures, and the choices they made. They were walking a fine line, and every step they took from here would determine the outcome. As Lyra turned to leave, she paused for a moment, her gaze lingering on him for a brief second longer than usual. "I will trust you, Captain," she said quietly, "but only if you show me that you are worthy of that trust." Alex watched her leave, the tension still lingering in the air. He knew that their journey together was far from over. There was still so much to learn, so much to understand. But for the first time, he felt a sense of hope. Perhaps, just perhaps, they could find a way forward. The days after their conversation in the training hall passed in a quiet hum of routine. Alex found himself more reflective than ever, his mind often drifting to Lyra. Their connection, fragile, uncertain, was like a thin thread, stretching taut with each passing moment. He wasn't sure if it was something he could repair, but one thing was clear: he couldn't ignore it any longer. He spent his days trying to keep busy, focusing on the mission, speaking with Lorien, and learning more about the culture of the alien people. But his mind kept returning to Lyra, to the bond they had unintentionally started. She remained a constant presence in his thoughts, a silent force that seemed to pull him in. Despite his inner conflict, Alex couldn't help but notice the changes in her as well. Lyra had not pushed him away after their conversation. Instead, she seemed to watch him with a quiet intensity, as if she, too, was waiting for something. She was always near, always present, but there was a distance in her eyes, a wall she kept between them. It was as if she were testing him, seeing if he was worthy of the bond that had formed between them. It was late one evening when Alex found himself walking the halls of the settlement, his mind swirling with questions he couldn't quite answer. He hadn't seen Lyra all day, but the pull to speak with her was stronger than ever. He wasn't sure what he expected from the conversation, whether it would be a turning point or an end, but he knew he couldn't keep walking around in uncertainty. As he entered the central courtyard, his eyes immediately found her. Lyra stood at the edge of the courtyard, overlooking the vast landscape beyond. The fading light of the twin suns cast long shadows, and the air was cool with the evening breeze. She stood tall, her figure silhouetted against the sky, and for a moment, Alex simply watched her, captivated by her strength, her presence, and the quiet sadness he saw in her stance. He took a step forward, unsure if she would even acknowledge his approach. But then she turned, her sharp gaze locking onto his. There was no surprise in her eyes, no hesitation. She had known he would come. "Captain," she said simply, her voice calm but carrying a weight that made his chest tighten. "Commander," Alex replied, his voice steady. "I've been thinking. About everything. About the bond, and what it means for us." Lyra didn't respond immediately, her eyes scanning his face as if searching for something. She took a step closer, her movements deliberate, graceful. "You've been thinking about it?" she asked, her tone almost amused, though there was no hint of mockery. "I have known this bond cannot be ignored. I did not think you would either." "I didn't know what to think," Alex admitted. "But now, I know I want to understand. I want to know where this goes. If you'll let me." Lyra studied him for a long moment, her eyes unreadable. Alex could feel the weight of her gaze, as if she were weighing every word he had spoken. The silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken thoughts, but Alex stood firm. He had come this far. He couldn't turn back now. "What if we do not form the bond you expect?" Lyra asked suddenly, her voice low. "What if the trust we seek never comes? What if I decide to sever this connection?" Alex's heart sank at her words, but he didn't look away. "Then I'll accept it. I'll respect your choice. But I need you to know that I want this connection, this bond. I want to see where it takes us. I believe we can build something meaningful, something worth fighting for." Lyra took another step closer, her expression softening just slightly. "And if I decide that this bond is not meant to be, that I cannot trust you, that we cannot walk this path together?" Alex paused, his thoughts swirling. "Then, I will walk away. I will do it without bitterness, without regret, because I will know I did everything I could to make it right. But I will not stop trying, Lyra. Not as long as there's a chance." There was a long pause as Lyra absorbed his words, her gaze unwavering. Finally, she took a deep breath and spoke again, her voice quiet but steady. "You speak of trust, Captain, but trust is not something that can be earned quickly. It is not something that can be rushed." She paused, as if choosing her next words carefully. "I have seen the way you look at me, the way you listen to my people, the way you strive to understand our ways. It is more than respect. I do not know if that is enough to form the bond I once thought was only for my people, but it is something I have never felt before. You have given me something to think about." Alex felt his heart beat faster. This was it. This was the moment he had been waiting for, though he wasn't sure if he was ready for it. The future was still uncertain, but something had shifted. The door was open, even if it was just a crack. "I will not force you, Lyra," Alex said, his voice steady. "I only want to try, to see if this bond can grow, if we can trust each other, but only if you want the same." Lyra stood in front of him for a long moment, her gaze fixed on his. She didn't say anything, but Alex could see the conflict in her eyes. It was a decision only she could make, and he knew it wouldn't be easy for her. Trust was not something that came quickly for her people, and yet, despite the barriers between them, he could sense that something was changing. Finally, Lyra spoke, her voice quieter now, more certain. "You have shown me your willingness. That is enough for now." Alex felt a wave of relief wash over him. It wasn't a full promise, but it was a beginning. A beginning they would have to build on, step by step, without rushing, without forcing anything. For the first time since arriving on this alien world, Alex felt a sense of hope. Maybe the future wasn't as uncertain as he had feared. Maybe, just maybe, they could find their way forward, together.